Bernie Sanders went after Betsy DeVos, who's Trump's education secretary pick. Now, Betsy DeVos is a Christian fundamentalist. She believes in private schools over public schools, and Trump wants her to be in charge of the public schools because the pirates have taken over. So, here's Bernie Sanders' line of questioning against her. Let's see how she does.
Mrs. DeVos, there is a growing fear, I think, in this country that we are moving toward what some would call an oligarchic form of society, where a small number of very, very wealthy billionaires control, to a significant degree, our economic and political life. Would you be so kind as to tell us how much money your family has contributed to the Republican Party over the years?
Senator, first of all, thank you for that question. Again, was pleased to meet you in your office last week. I wish I could give you that number. I don't know.
I have heard the number was $200 million. Does that sound in the ballpark?
Collectively, between
over
my
the years,
entire
yes.
family, that's possible.
Okay. My question is, and I don't mean to be rude, but do you think if you were not a multi-billionaire, if your family has not made hundreds of millions of dollars of contributions to the Republican Party, that you would be sitting here today?
Senator, as a matter of fact, I do think that there would be that possibility. I've worked very hard on behalf of parents and children for the last almost 30 years to be a voice for parents and voice for students and to empower parents to make decisions on behalf of their children, primarily low-income children.
Thank you. In your statement, your prepared statement, you say, and I quote, students should make informed choices about what type of education they want to pursue post-high school and have access to high-quality options. Some of us believe that we should make public colleges and universities tuition-free so that every young person in this country, regardless of income, does have that option. That's not the case today. Will you work with me and others to make public colleges and universities tuition-free through federal and state efforts?
Senator, I think that's a really interesting idea, and it's really great to consider and think about. But I think we also have to consider the fact that there's nothing in life that's truly free. Somebody's going to pay for it. And so,
yes, you're right.
And
you're right.
so
Somebody will pay for it, but that takes us to another issue.
I think
and that is, if I may, and that is right now we have proposals in front of us to substantially lower tax breaks for billionaires in this country, while at the same time low-income kids can't afford to go to college. Do you think that makes sense?
Senator, I think if your question is really around how can we help college and higher education be more affordable for young people as they anticipate.
Actually, that wasn't my question. My question is, should we make public colleges and universities tuition-free so that every family in America, regardless of income, will have the ability to have their kids get a higher education? That was my question.
Senator, I think we can work together, and we could work hard on making sure that college or higher education in some form is affordable for all young people that want to pursue it.
Wrong. 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 You're wrong. You're wrong. We got any more bullshit left for us? I think it should be, like, affordable and stuff. That's not what he asked. He asked, should we make it tuition-free? And should we largely pay for it by getting rid of gigantic tax cuts for billionaires? Her answer is no. And she didn't want to say it because, what he's describing is obviously massively popular. So she's like, yeah, well, I think that maybe it can be, like, kind of more affordable or something. Okay, $200 million is the number that he just gave. He said $200 million is about how much her and her family have given to Republican politicians over the years. That's amazing. And let me go ahead and answer that question for Bernie. Do you think you'd be here if your family didn't donate that much money? The answer is no. There's not a snowball's chance in hell you'd be there. Because you're the most unqualified person for this position ever. So she herself is a billionaire. She has no education degree, no teaching experience. She never attended a public school or state university, never put her own children in public school, does not believe in or support public education. She's on the record for all this stuff. Believes that public school teachers are overpaid, of course. Supports for-profit education, invested $200 million in Christian schools and organizations, and doggedly advocates funneling money out of public education and into for-profit Christian-based education. And when it comes to Trump specifically, she donated about $9.5 million to his campaign. That's why she's picked. And she's, out of all of his disgusting picks, she's one of the worst. She is. She wants to totally tear down the public education system in the U.S., privatize it, which further leads to income and wealth inequality and stratification. It would make it so only wealthy kids can afford to go to good schools. Instead of trying to fix the public education system and make it better, she wants to go in the opposite direction. Now, also you heard her say there, the talking point which drives me crazy to this day because it's the dumbest fucking dodge I've ever heard in my life. Nothing's free. As if people who are in favor of so-called free college or free healthcare, free anything, as if we really think like, well, you sprinkle the pixie dust and then it grows out of nowhere because we said it's free, so it's literally free. No, free simply means universal. Universal simply means funded by our tax dollars. Now, I know you think that's so icky and so gross, and why would you be in favor of anything being funded by tax dollars ever? That's because you're an extremist. That's why you think that. And oftentimes when we refer to free, aka universal college or healthcare, anything, we're talking about not even necessarily raising taxes. I often talk about reallocating the resources we already spend. So, for example, we spent $7 trillion in the war in Iraq. What if that money went somewhere else? What if that money went towards these things we're talking about? Infrastructure, education, healthcare. We spend $100 billion every single year to maintain 800 military bases around the world. What if we didn't? What if we took that money and put it towards something else? What if instead of giving ExxonMobil billions of dollars a year for research and development as a corporate welfare check, we didn't, and we took that money and we spent it on the people? What about that? What if we took the discretionary budget, where over 50% of the money goes to the military, and we said, how about no? How about we chop that down to 25% and we take the remaining 25% or so, a little more than that, and we spend that on other things that matter, that count more, that aren't a product of grotesque corruption within the system. So oftentimes when we talk about, hey, let's do universal education, free education, let's do universal healthcare, free healthcare, that's what we mean. But see, if you're not an idiot, you would understand that right when we say it, and it wouldn't have to be explained to you like you're a child. Now it's what you are. Like, I don't think anything is free. Nobody actually thinks it is literally free, you moron. So I can't. And then Bernie recommends, again, another great idea. So I often talk about reallocating the resources, but Bernie, to be fair to him, he says, no, I actually would raise taxes, but he's clear about who he'd raise taxes on. Let's do it on the rich. Let's do it on billionaires. He also says, by the way, and I think this is how he funded his education plan during the campaign, is he said, I do a transaction tax on Wall Street, and I would actually raise enough money to do universal college. So, yeah, we get it. It's not literally free. That's not what that means, you moron. So he picked billionaire Sarah Palin for education secretary. And it is fucking embarrassing to see this. So, Betsy DeVos, step aside. If the Democrats don't block her, now I get, the numbers, you don't have the numbers. I don't give a fuck if I have the numbers. I would invent a way to block her. Or at least if we can't block her, go down swinging in a way you've never seen anybody swinging in human history. So, hey, you can't do, I said it before, I would invent the idea of a filibuster in a hearing. Go ahead, it's your time. and then you start talking, and then you don't shut up. Can you yield your time? It's over. Wrong. I'm not going to yield. Let me continue to tell you how terrible she is for this position. Tell you all of her flaws. Tell you all of her issues. Tell you the fact how she bought this position through corruption, how our government is functioning as an oligarchy. I would invent a hearing filibuster to block people like this. I do it for her. I do it for Jeff Sessions. I do it for Pouzder. I do it for a bunch of his picks. I'm reasonable. I'll let some of them through if they're not totally and utterly insane. For example, General Mattis talked Trump out of believing in torture. Okay, that guy, on that alone, you're good to go. You're more reasonable than any of the other picks. Boom, I'll let you go through. But if you're anti-labor and you want to be the labor secretary, if you're against the energy department and you want to lead the energy department, if you're against public education and you want to lead public education, you can piss right off. And I got the American people on my side, and I'll make that crystal clear. And I'll blow up your record to the point where every single news outlet in the country is covering how terrible you are. That's what I do. So the Democrats better grow a spine and fight back against somebody like Betsy DeVos because she cannot get this position.